Jack, there we go. I was gonna say, let the ladies know that we're about to get started.
Motion so we can read it?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the Carver Board of Selectmen's July 9th, 2013 meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And at this time, we will be adjourning to executive session to discuss contract negotiations for the interim town administrator.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21A2, that the board go into executive session to conduct strategy in preparation for negotiation of a contract with interim town administrator James Purcell, and that we reconvene in open session.
We have a motion?
I'd like to recuse myself.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second.
This on? Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear him. Any further comments, questions, or anything? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 We have 3, 4, and 0, 2.
And we'll go into the room next
Go
door.
right into the
All right, we'll
admin
go in
office there if you
Okay.
want.
And what, we just met in executive session. I'd like to turn the town council, have them give an explanation of what's going on here.
Thank you through you, Mr. Vice Chair. After the board voted a couple of weeks ago to appoint Mr. Purcell as interim town administrator, my office as town council negotiated an agreement with Mr. Purcell and put those terms down in writing. The essential terms of the agreement are that he agrees to work approximately 19 and a half office hours per week at a rate of $75 per hour. He will have a typical time in the office between 9:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. 3 days per week, and that he agrees to be available at such other times as the Board of Selectmen needs him. Mr. Purcell, these terms agreeable to you?
They are, yes.
Okay. And the board has had an opportunity to review these terms, and so
We have, and so I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion, we accept this contract.
And I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. And, Mr. Chairman, could I just ask for a brief break so we can sign the contract? The town clerk has come here tonight because she has to attest to our signatures.
Absolutely. Take 5.
on a fairly constant basis, so nothing will slide.
Thank you for that, and I'm sure we'll take care of the phone.
Yep, we discussed that.
And I would ask the audience's patience with us for a couple more minutes. The board, some members of the board will be going back into executive discussion, executive session to discuss the police union memorandum of agreement. So bear with us.
I have a motion for that.
Mr. Frady has a motion.
I move pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, that the board go into executive session to conduct strategy and preparation for negotiation of a contract with the Carver Police Union, and that we reconvene in open session.
We have a motion?
Second that motion.
And we have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
401.
Says aye.
Okay, thank you for your patience. Bear with it.
Police Union contract, and I'd like to defer to Chief Mix.
Thank you. I'm going to give a brief overview of the memorandum of agreement that we've reached with the police union. This agreement covers the period of fiscal 2012, excuse me, I should probably actually go with the dates because I'm messing them up already. This is going to take care of fiscal 13, fiscal 14, and in fiscal 15, there'll be a wage reopener. The union has agreed to a 0% raise for last year. That was actually in line with a lot of the other unions in town. As of July 1st, 2013, they're going to get a 2% increase. And July 1st, 2014, the contract will be opened up to negotiate wages. The union did this along with the town in fairness, as a way to see where the economy is and where the town's standing. So I commend the police officers for their cooperation with the town in settling this agreement. Having been here for a number of years and usually going 5 years without a contract, I gotta say we did a pretty good job getting this one done. And for us, a reasonable amount of time. We're only a year out. The other thing that this does is it does guarantee an educational incentive for police officers going forward. Again, I see this as a very important thing for the town, as well as the officers. A number of towns do not have, or they've done away with what's commonly known as the Quinn Bill, or other educational incentives. A lot of those towns have become training grounds for other towns to take who have kept the educational incentives. So they'll train these officers, have them for a year or two, and the officers transfer out. I didn't want to see Carver become that type of place. You've got a good group of officers here. I think the contract's fair. It took care of a few other small issues we had going on as far as some job titles and working conditions. But the main things that it took care of is the Quinn Bill and the 0-2 and a wage reopener. I would recommend that the board agree to this.
Okay,
I make a, this thing doesn't work, huh? I make a motion that we accept this contract.
I
motion
second.
made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Mr. Chairman, could I have another brief recess so that we can sign the contract?
Certainly. Did the town clerk stick around?
She
doesn't
just
need
went to get her book to be able to sign Jim in.
We're going to swear in
to
the
swear you
interim
in
town
tonight.
administrator. So.
Thank you.
Peter, are these mics working?
So,
Our next item was the swearing in of the interim town administrator, and that would be Madam Clerk, Mr. Purcell, and if the selectmen join me out front.
Raise your right hand, repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear
All right, it's official now. Direct all your complaints to Mr. Purcell. Jackson, we're all set with the first two items, ratifying the contract.
That's right.
All right, next up, and we're running just a little behind schedule, is the public records request for CPC minutes. Mr. Robert Bentley.
Good evening, I'm Bob Bentley, 60 Wenham Road, CPC Chair. And I guess I'm here to respond to comments made at the last Selectmen's meeting discussing public records request, open meeting law violations, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to recap slightly the occurrences of the last meeting. I think they're relevant to tonight's discussion. I've noted that Ms. Maroney specifically stated that there were so many open meeting law issues, it was best to place my reappointment on the table. Her clear implication was that the CPC was not in compliance with the law, and that was actually included in the motion that she made. She had no knowledge of this, but took the representation from Mr. Johnson, who was clear in his comments that he really didn't know. And there was a clear implication by Mr. O'Donnell that the CPC was dragging this out. To quote him, he said, "They cannot drag this on forever." So, in relation to Mr. Johnson's, let me just state that the Community Preservation Committee has been meeting and acting in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44B, Section 13, it's just Chapter 44B, since its inception in 2006. We've met every requirement for keeping minutes of all of our meetings since then, and under Section 13 of Chapter 44B. Our meetings have been posted in accordance with the law, and any citizen who would have attended any one of our meetings would have seen that minutes have been kept and voted on in a timely fashion. Unfortunately, individuals who are making complaints haven't attended. In relation to Mr. Johnson's request and the implication by Mr. O'Donnell, the following is the timeline in response to Mr. Johnson's public records request. On the 8th of June 2013, Mr. Johnson wrote a letter, then stated on the 8th of June, requesting records. The request received by the CPC on the 10th of June. The first response from the CPC was sent to Mr. Johnson on the 18th of June with a request for payment as in accordance with the public records request law. The payment, in accordance with the public records law, was received on the 23rd of June. The response was sent to Mr. Johnson on the 25th of June. Mr. Johnson, with my certified return receipt mail that I received that on the 27th of June. I therefore submit that the total time from the first receipt to the final product was 15 to, at the most, 17 days. To suggest that this committee has been dragging its feet is just totally erroneous, and I take umbrage at that, Mr. O'Donnell.
That's certainly your alternative, Mr. Bentley.
Absolutely. And finally, I should note that the more appropriate person to talk with about this would be the former treasurer tax collector, Mr. Franey, and the bond counsel at the time, as well as the former town accountant, John Q. Adams. They effectuated the entire bonding process for the Cole property bond. The CPC had minimal involvement in this, and if memory serves me correctly, Mr. Franey at the time said this was a no-brainer in terms of bonding. I don't understand why it is that the board wasted 10 minutes of the last meeting out of an hour-long session discussing this issue, and I don't understand why Mr. Johnson brought this up in the first place, because he could have come to a meeting and asked a question, and he didn't.
Why don't we ask Mr. Johnson?
I'm not interested in an interrogatory, sir.
I am.
I'm not.
I am.
I am not.
Well, I don't care what you're interested in, quite frankly, okay? We want Mr. Johnson to explain his position, too.
Mr. Johnson explained at length his position
Johnson,
at the last meeting.
Excuse me a minute, Mr. Bentley. Mr. Johnson, why don't you have a seat up there? so we can also question you.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I think that in this case, we ought to hear from Mr. Bentley and then Mr. Johnson afterwards. Have you finished, Mr. Bentley? Okay.
Okay, the first thing I'd like to say is Bob did respond in a timely manner to the public records request. There was no problem with that. The reason I didn't come to Mr. Bentley's committee is that when I began to look into this, I was initially assumed that I'd be able to go to the town clerk's office and get all the minutes and look at all the minutes without a problem. I went down to the town clerk's office and asked to see the records for 2007, 2008, and there were exactly 2 sets of minutes up there. So I then came to this meeting, and you were considering reappointments, and at that point in time, to the best of my knowledge, for 2 years, for a period of 2 years, there were exactly 2 sets of minutes in the possession of the town clerk. And that didn't seem like it was a record in compliance with the open meeting law. This isn't just implications of Bob Bentley, it's the selectmen on July 11th of 2011, I think, 11th or 12th of 2011, voted to recommend that everybody submit their records to the town clerk. So that they would be, I would assume that the reason for that is so they'd be stored properly in fireproof containers, the way they're supposed to be, on the correct kind of paper for permanent minutes, the way they're supposed to be, with the correct kind of ink for permanent papers, the way they're supposed to be, but that's not happening. It's not just Bob's committee, it's a lot of committees. And I think that's, I think that's problematic. I think when you do reappointments, the reappointments should be done at hearings so that the public can give their input at that. I wouldn't have done this if I had had the time before then to have asked Bob for the records. I have since done that. I've asked to inspect the records to the CPC committee from 2007 to 2011. I have yet to get a response to that, but I only sent it to him on Friday. Bob has been good about responding, and I'm not criticizing him for that. What I'm concerned about is whether public records that are fundamental to the functioning of the government, minutes, which are permanent records, are in the custody of the right people, stored in the right areas, and that we know, I can't even figure out who the records custodian is for the CPC. It's not contained in our bylaw, and the CPC statute doesn't specify it. So I don't know if the town clerk is a custodian or if Bob is a custodian. I don't know where physically they're kept. They're supposed to be available for the public in a timely manner.
Where are they?
A, the minutes are available in a timely manner, as is evidenced by what I presented. And B, the minutes are kept by both the secretary as well as myself.
Shouldn't they be located in the town hall?
They're presently not located in the town hall because we don't have any physical ability to store them in the town hall.
The town clerk's not supposed to maintain all the minutes?
Mr.
There's
Chair,
absolutely nothing in the law that requires the town clerk to retain those minutes.
Mr. Chair, if I may, open meeting law does not require the town clerk to keep minutes. It doesn't require any member of any committee, board, commission, to turn in minutes to the town clerk's office. It simply, as Bob pointed out, requires that if a request is made for minutes, they have to be available. And I think that I think the implication that there's been some sort of open meeting law violation is fairly slanderous, in my opinion, and I don't think it's appropriate.
Nobody's accusing Mr. Bentley of anything. We're
Well, I
trying to
think they
answer a
are.
citizen's request for records.
Yeah, I
Excuse me,
think they
Mr.
are.
O'Donnell, you
People
did
are
accuse me,
extrapol-
and Ms. Maroney
People are
accused me.
extrapolating out that they're being accused of all manner of things. And that
No,
is a
you actually did accuse Mr. Bentley of
Oh, I
dragging
don't
his
think I
feet.
did, Ms.
It's on the
Ewens.
I can
DVD.
quote you.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
That you said they cannot drag this on forever, Mr. O'Donnell. You said that specifically,
Because
those
there was-
words.
Because there was a statement made saying that he's got no response.
But he had a
And
response.
Mr. Johnson was extremely clear in the fact that I had not really had enough time to respond. You're the one who said I cannot drag this on forever. You
Did I say Mr. Bentley or did I say the CPC?
you
Did
clearly
I specifically say Mr. Bentley?
because you were working specifically on my reappointment, I assumed, and I think the entire community has to assume, that it was me.
You know what happens when you assume things, right, Mr. Bentley?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely, and you should.
Well, so should you.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just want to express, I understand where your frustration is, Bob. I just want to clarify that I was concerned about overall open meeting law violations in minutes, because we had discussed at our meetings previous that we have to get a nice system for getting minutes. If you took that I was directing it at you personally, that's not my comment. If you go back and look at the tape, I said, we have a lot of open meeting violations. I was talking in a general statement that I think every week when I come in and see my packet, there's another open meeting law violation. It was no way a reflection on your committee. I do agree, though, that we do need to set up a system, and I believe that even though it's not a law, we were on the path of allowing or asking that the minutes get to the town clerk so we have received dates and we can have a better handle on it. I don't think we're trying to make order, and I'm gonna say it again, and again, this isn't for your committee, but we have so many violations. I have another bill from our attorney. I don't wanna say the amount, but I will tell you how many costs are going to open meeting violations. So I don't think it is wrong for the Board of Selectmen to try to get to the bottom of why people have to go out of their way to find minutes. It was not, my personal comments were not directed at you. It's directed at the whole entire process. And there is no reason why you can't get them to the town clerk and have to make, somebody should be able to call town hall and be able to get the minutes from the town clerk's office. We need a system, and I regret if you took this personally, because that was not my intent whatsoever. But I do believe that we need a process.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Franklin.
2 years ago, I brought this up because I was concerned about this. And we did, as a board, some sort of a policy, maybe we need to put more teeth into it. For all the committees that we appoint, or to anyone that we appoint, that they turn their minutes over to the town clerk's office in a timely basis. Because those are permanent records that we should be maintaining someplace. If different committees are keeping them and keeping them in their own possession, and they start to fall on difficult times where they're not meeting or anything, they could be lost. That's why I wanted that. That's not to single you out or anyone else out. The other thing in your reference to me is the former treasurer collector. We went out, we bonded that money. We only had to bond $900,000 of it. But it's the determination of the CPC every year, whether they want to pay that $100,000 and pay the interest. And I believe you get the interest from the town accountant, so don't be dragging me into this thing.
Mr. Franny, that's part of my problem with this is there've been disparaging comments made online and in the newspapers about who originated the CPC project to fund the interest rate on the Cole property. The records that Bob has turned over to me indicate that it was my project, but I can't find records anywhere that says when a vote was taken on that. But you will notice that all the numbers that came from that project came from the project that I submitted. It was submitted in my own handwriting. And the records that he has provided to me indicated that it was Paul Johnson on that committee. Now, the problem that I have is that when we get into these things and we get into half stories. For instance, the half story that says that they don't have to be stored with the town clerk. That's part of the story. The rest of the story is that those minutes, it is not legal for them to be stored outside this building unless they're in a fireproof safe provided by the municipality. So if they're stored someplace else, that's a violation of the public records law. They have to be on certain kinds of paper. They have to be with certain kinds of ink because they are permanent records. And it doesn't sound like we're living up to those standards. And I don't think it's just Bob. I'm not accusing just Bob of this.
It's not just Bob, it's a lot of committees. And if you look back over the years, probably after the past 20 years, you might find committees that have never turned records in and we don't have a record of it. And it was a starting point 2 years ago to do that. And I think that maybe we should, later on, probably make a motion that we put this on the next agenda to put some more teeth behind it so that we can make sure it gets done all the time.
Your request that you did was on July 12th, 2011. Because those minutes were available online, it took me less than a half an hour to get those minutes. And to find the minutes, it was a motion that was made by Mr. Ward that was seconded by Ms. Hewens, and it passed unanimously to recommend that they go to the town clerk's office. I think it would be wise for those records to be stored in accordance with the law, which says they've got to be in fireproof cabinets on certain kinds of paper. because they're permanent records. They are the highest level of records retentions that the state has. So, you know, I need to be able to, when I come up and I go looking for something, I should be able to go through those records. I don't think it's enough just to be in the town clerk's office. That website is a great resource. You can go through that website in a few minutes, like you can in the old virtual town hall, because I believe that's where this one was stored, in the virtual town hall.
Well, originally, I wanted them all to be turned into our office, but then we figured the best logical place for them to be would be the town clerk's office. Not to overburden the town clerk's office, but they have a fireproof safe, and they know a little bit more about the public records law than I do,
Right.
or even, but, you know, I don't want to continue on too much and get out of the realm of what's in front of us and have another public meeting violation too.
Mr. Corbo has got some information he's going to enlighten us with on this.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to talk about any specific situations about what people may or may not be doing with public records. But what I will say is that the supervisor publishes a detailed publication that explains exactly where public records should be kept and how they should be kept. And my recommendation to this board is that I provide you with a copy of that manual, and that you, if you haven't done so already, that you come up with a very clear policy that explains to all custodians of public records exactly the conditions under which those records should be kept, so that it's clear to everyone, and that everyone can understand what their obligations are under the law, as well as what their obligations are with respect to their responsibilities to the town of Carver. You know, clearly you're not required to keep records or have them be available via the internet, but certainly that is something that could be part of that type of policy.
And we could make a policy that would be the policy of the board for the committees that we appoint, or the individuals that we appoint, that they act in a certain circumstance. And in those policies, I think we should renew with our committees and our appointees every year, so that they're refreshed.
One of the problems, Jack, you know, I've been on the North Carver Water Commission, and it is difficult for, especially if you don't have resources, clerical resources available, or sufficient clerical resources to be available to you. There is no feedback as to what minutes you're deficient and don't have. It's a manual grind to go through them all to determine if you've complied. There needs to be some kind of overall system to decide that, you know, for the close of the fiscal year, do you have all your minutes in? Very difficult job. I did it, and it was tedious.
I think we can put that up for discussion at our next meeting, and maybe we can even put our new interim town administrator to work to come up with some sort of suggestions or policies for us. You might already have some of those from other communities in which you served in.
First hook. It's likely that I could find a template out there somewhere. I don't know if, through you, Mr. Chairman of Council, if policy makes law necessarily, operationally, but you know, I'll have to read the Supervisor of Public Records manual again, and get some clarity there. You know, can you compel people to do it, or do you set a policy, as apparently you did in 2011? And compliance becomes an issue. But
Well, I was thinking of policies for people that come
I understand.
under our jurisdiction, not other elected officials or other committees that are appointed from the school board or planning board or someone like that.
we'll put a line out there and see if we can't come up with some kind of a beginning, starting point for you.
Mr. Lewis.
Chair, I was concerned with our whole discussion on that because I didn't want to be in an open meeting law violation with us doing extensive discussion, and the person we were discussing wasn't here and there was nothing on our agenda. The committee appointments, although they're a part of our agenda, probably should have some kind of limited participation of citizens, in case there's some bona fide problem that someone may have and they may be concerned about. But that deserves some measure of protection, too. The person asking for reappointment has the right to be available to defend themselves or the committee they are on, which is in the case with Mr. Bentley. I felt like he just wasn't here and didn't get a chance to. So I think Paul brought it up. The committee appointment process maybe should be a hearing process.
Well,
Jack brought
if you remember correctly, when that first came up, I wanted to have the people available here, and it was almost like an automatic thing.
Well, if you
I
don't,
didn't expect that to happen.
I mean, that doesn't necessarily, you had about 25 people that are asking for
But
reappointment.
at least also find out if they want to continue to serve, because I
Well,
think
we
we
did
just
ask
rubber
We
them.
did
stamp,
that,
you know.
we did
Okay.
that.
We made the calls from our office to everybody.
Okay.
I'm just saying that if you're gonna make the reappointments, and we have the citizens out there, and someone has a bona fide problem they're concerned with, then if they should be allowed to come forward with that in the process.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's exactly what happened here.
Yeah,
Right.
so, but that,
Mr. Johnson brought forth a problem,
right.
and it involved an individual, so we rescheduled it and we brought them both in tonight.
Well, we did
Discuss it.
extensive conversation on it, so
But I
It was
think,
Citizens' participation, I think.
No,
The
it
issue was
wasn't
brought up.
actually. No, you just let him speak.
during that item.
I think part of the,
Something, we gotta do that next time.
part
we
of the
come.
process, if someone has a comment or an objection to someone, I think it should be submitted ahead of time, not the night of the thing. Because then if it's submitted ahead of time, the person that
Well, that would,
is the object of
Be
that
part of our
could be here.
Yeah.
Well, now you're going back to the way the old business was conducted and submit 8 copies of this, and
No, I'm not saying
I
that.
didn't.
I'm just saying, Jack,
Yeah.
you know, we went back to open it up for citizens' participation, allow people to bring things forward, and if it's not on the agenda, it was all voted on, that it would be scheduled for a future agenda, and that's
I-
what it.
I don't
what
But
mean
it was not on the agenda, and it was not part of this, last meeting was not part of citizens' participation. It came out of the blue, pretty much.
Whatever, it's on tonight's agenda. Mr. Bentley has had his opportunity, and Mr. Johnson has explained his position too. Do you have your minutes, Mr. Johnson?
I have 2 sets of minutes. I do not have any record of a vote on the project that I submitted. And that project was approved for the 2008 town meeting.
Well, I'd say that Mr. Johnson hasn't read the minutes correctly.
Okay, maybe you need to reread those, Mr. Johnson. What else are you waiting for?
I have asked to see the records of the minutes for 2007 to 2013.
Okay. Why don't you get with Mr. Bentley,
I will.
after the two of you leave the microphone there, and discuss how you're gonna approach this? And then if there's a problem, let us know.
Sounds like
Okay.
a plan.
Anything further?
My goal in doing this wasn't to skew a Bob. It wasn't. It came up out of the blue because there was a reappointment on the table, and seemed like it needed to be heard.
All right, see if you can, two of you can work it out, and if not, then we'll get back together on it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next up is a request to remove fencing around old tennis courts at Sampson's Pond to allow better use of the space. David Wojcik? Do we have anybody from the Recreation Committee here tonight?
That particular property is under the jurisdiction of the Council on Aging.
Council on Aging?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody from the COA here?
Why don't
Okay.
we listen?
All right, we'll
yeah.
have a seat. State your name, your address, and why you're here, Mr. Wojcik.
My name's Dave Wojcik. I live at 42 Crystal Lake Drive. I've been a Carver resident for 25 years. A couple of years ago, I started a local bass tournament group called Cranbog Hogs. We provide, some recreation and some organization to some of the local fishermen. We have a great group of guys. And the organization has begun to grow to the point where we're started to include some charity work. And this is going to be our first sponsored charity event. I have a package here. Can I give these to the selectmen?
Certainly.
I think we already have them.
You and I will I'll have to look on together.
Yeah, and I did,
I applied for and was approved for a permit
Gave us these
to use the Sampson site for a charity tournament on October 13th. You should see a copy of that there. There were also business cards there from my organization and the charitable organization, which is Families for Hope. HOPE is an acronym for a fatal birth defect that Ed Tierney's daughter has. The child was born with a misformed brain, and generally they pass away when they're 5 years old. He's been wanting to run a tournament for Families for Hope, and they also have another branch called Fishing for Hope, and they run these tournaments and so on and so forth. So we're just kind of getting into this. We walked the Sampson's Pond area a couple of weeks ago, and what we were doing was we're again, planning. We've got a country and western band that has agreed to show up and play if we get approval for all this. But one of the things that we noticed was the old tennis court there and how dilapidated it is and so on and so forth. So we thought about asking the town about possibly removing that fence. I talked to Bill Halloran, and he gave me approval to do that pending coming before the Selectmen, which is why I'm here. I don't know the whole process, so I'm walking down a dark path right now. But we did walk around. You'll see in the first picture, I took a picture of the full tennis court area, which shows how overgrown it is. The second picture is from inside the tennis court. On the left-hand side of the photograph, you'll see the entrance from the north side of the tennis court. And on the right-hand side, on the eastern side there, you'll see how heavily overgrown the fence is. Those are tree limbs, not just brush coming through the fence. The third photograph is the southwest corner, which clearly shows, again, more growth. The south fence is missing some parts, and the gate is also missing. What the town would receive if we get okay to take the fence down is you will have 11,000 square feet of free and open space for any event. This does not in any way, shape, or form benefit a bass tournament or cranball hogs or anything else. If somebody wants to do something with that, you know what I mean, they can go roller skate, you know, in there, or whatever the heck it is. It's open space for everybody. What we're gonna do is, we'd cut the fence down, leave all the holes in the ground covered. If somebody else wants to block it off, you could have two 5,000 square foot areas for different events. If the town wanted to, somebody took out a permit and wanted to have a big wedding party down there and so on and so forth, you've got 11,000 square feet of free and open space for other events.
Well, I think first of all, we need to establish who controls that. Perhaps it belongs to the Council on Aging. It looks like it might be part of their parcel down there, or it may belong to the Recreation Committee. But I think that we need to get those two organizations in here to discuss the issue, and then perhaps see what, if any, other uses are proposed for that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
John Ranella, 2-3 years ago, told me that he either had a youth group from his church or someplace, and they would go down there from time to time and play like street hockey in there, in the confines of the fence would,
Right.
you know, protect the ball from going, we don't know,
I can elaborate on it.
yeah.
I talked to the gentleman that has run that program for the last 6 or 7 years, and they have been running, they ran street hockey there last winter. I looked at it and I asked him how he did that, and he said they ran it in a way that any of these exposed cracks that you see, they were running so that those were the boundaries. And they had pylon markers, and they improvised, but they ran a program. He didn't know exactly if he'd be doing it this year again, but he did say that he hoped we would keep the fence up. I was kind of in the direction of take the fence down myself, so
But
where we go with this one,
I don't think it would take too much to rehabilitate the property if we wanted to do that.
It doesn't, because it's not as dilapidated as you think it is.
Yeah.
It's got a couple of the gates in there. There might be one gate and one's off, and then there's a rip in the,
let me tell you how old this place is, Jack.
fencing, so.
I was a selectman in 1972. And we bought the Atwood House down there that the Council for the Aging is in. So that means it's 43 years old, and this tennis court went in shortly after that. So that fence is getting close to 40 years old.
But did anyone ever
Still
use it
standing.
for a tennis court?
Still
I mean,
standing,
it looks
yeah.
like it's never been used.
But I looked at it, it was plastic, black plastic fence. And if you look where the plastic cracked out, the metal underneath it is rusted. So,
But apparently, from time to time, people go down there and use it for whatever reason, so.
All right,
they
not-
really-
not to belabor this, we've got other items on the.
Could I just briefly say something? And I know we had talked, David, earlier, but since talking, I kind of agree with Mike that maybe we should let this Council on Aging
I agree,
and
sure.
maybe the Rec Committee get
That's
together.
why I'm here, to find out
Right.
the process.
Because my only concern was if there is some future use that would require a fence, okay, now we have to go buy a new fence.
Right.
And I'd hate to see the intent, your intent obviously is good, you want to keep it open, but I'd hate to see it be taken over by parking and everyone just assuming now it's parking. You
Mhm.
can't use it for anything else.
Right.
So maybe we should talk to those other two groups.
definitely.
If we can put that on a future agenda there, Elaine. And you're certainly welcome to come back and
Sure.
and participate in the
Absolutely.
discussion. And thank you for initiating it,
Mhm.
because it's long overdue.
Sure. And, if it doesn't happen this year, maybe we can do it next year.
Sure.
Because Sampson's Pond is a pond of destination for the bass fishermen, So when I run these events, I get a real good crowd to show up. So, we're gonna run it there this year, but if the fence isn't down, we can still run a very, very, very good event. It'd be a big help if it was open space. If it's not, we'll still be knocking on your door for another permit, maybe to hold something a little bit bigger and so on and so forth. But, we're getting there. We're working on it.
And we appreciate all the efforts that you do in
All right,
helping
thank you for your time.
the charity.
We've
All right,
never
thank
had
you
any
for your time.
complaints,
Thank
so.
you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. All right, item for discussion and possible vote, approval for Collins Center to begin permanent town administrator search.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
we're still in need of funding for this. We can't really award anything until we have the funding. I've talked to the Finance Committee Chairman. I'm gonna go before them on the 15th to see if we can secure some funding.
And I'm recusing myself
Okay.
from this discussion.
So,
So you want
I-
to table this until?
yeah, I think we need to until we have the funding for it.
All
You know. I did talk to Jim a little bit, and maybe I can work with him and come up with some ideas.
I'll second his motion, but I did want some discussion.
Okay,
Because our next meeting will be the last week in August. Do we want to wait that long before we initiate something?
I think
well,
need to
we
move
have
forward.
other items on the agenda, might dictate that we need to have a meeting in a couple of weeks, so.
I think our schedule is pretty.
You know, discussion on either a permanent or interim chief, we'd have to come up with a contract for
All right,
that as well, so that we'd have something, I'd say, in a couple of weeks.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on it?
No.
Hearing none. All those in favor of tabling, please say aye.
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 301, 302. Okay, next up is establish the parameters of a screening committee for a permanent town administrator and request for letters of interest.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Jack, before you start,
Okay.
I'm sorry, my vote was not in there. I recused myself, so if you're,
301.
whatever, I'm not speaking for you, but I did not participate in that vote.
Okay.
And I'm going to recuse myself from this one as well.
I thought since we're potentially gonna have the Collins Center do the first part of this, it will make it that relatively easy for us to have a screening committee, and I'd like to recommend a membership of either 5 or 7 members on that.
I was thinking a lot about this, Jack, and I was thinking that if we had a fairly large group, because I can remember the screening committee that did our initial town administrator position, there were 13 people. And I was thinking, if the Collins Center comes in with some 13 or 15, whatever, bona fide candidates, then if you had a fairly diverse, fairly large group, you might be better because there would be more discussion. So what I was saying, what I'm thinking is that a lot of the major committees have a representative there, and then several citizens at large.
Well, you know, we're,
Don't make it just 5 or 7.
well, you know, we're gonna have a much, not that the prior committee didn't do a good job, but we were new to that process, and we didn't have the availability of someone like a Collins Center that's gonna do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. We could even use them if we wanted to be our screening committee, but we'd prefer to do it ourselves. So that's why we're only using them for the first stage of it. And it's relatively more easy to work with a smaller group of people. That's why I said 5 to 7. You know, and we need to complete this process in a fast-track time period, because the interim town administrator that we have is gonna be here 17 weeks. And
Yep.
it takes them 90 to 120 days, so we're really gonna have to move very quickly. We'll probably have to have a meeting a week, or maybe 2 meetings a week or something like that. And I think with a large group, it might drag out the process.
Once we put the Collins Center to work, and they come across with their recommendations. Yep.
Through you,
So-
Mr. Chair? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
No, go ahead.
Are you done?
I'm done.
Okay. When we originally brought this up for discussion and then we tabled it, I had put together just a template of my thoughts on it, so, I don't know if we can use it as a base, but I had, yeah. Well, I had recommended, I don't need to go through all of the language, but in terms of who should be on it, I had recommended there shall be a total of 7 members of the screening committee voted in by the Board of Selectmen. The screening committee members shall include the following town representatives: 2 Board of Selectmen, 1 school committee member, 1 finance committee member, and 3 Carver residents. I agree with Jack that I think in terms of having to really crunch for time and wanting to get the town administrator as soon as possible, and the fact that I think we've all worked in group settings before, that the more you have, I believe, the less productive it sometimes becomes, and that's why I think if you have a diverse group, in keeping it between, you know, I said 7, keeping it somewhat limited, at least you're getting someone from each area of the town, including the residents, so. That was my thoughts.
You have it, Mr. Chair. You have 3 major committees represented: Finance, School Committee, Selectmen. I was kind of thinking that we should include more than that. Like, we have the Finance Committee, we have the School Committee. What about the Capital Outlay Committee? What about the Planning Board? They are 2 important committees that maybe should be involved in that too. And then citizens at large.
Well, you know, my concern is to try and get this in as timely and efficient manner as we can. And, you know, and the larger the committee, the bigger the quorum is. So if you have a smaller committee, you have a smaller quorum. And it's, you know, like I said, much of the heavy lifting has been done by the Collins Center. No one ever had the ability to have those types of people out there before. That was only formed in 2008, and I think it was formed primarily to, you know, for these types of purposes here, so we can take advantage of it. And my biggest concern is, you know, I don't want to run out of time and have a gap in there where we don't have a town administrator or we're trying to look for one. That's my principal concern here. And the other thing is we're going to have, before I thought it was just going to be Dick and myself and Helen, so there'd probably only be 1 member of us on it. But if Mike's available to participate in this, you can't have a quorum of the selectmen serving on this committee. I don't know what the quorum is with 4 members.
So why don't we take this recommendation, instead of 2 Board of Selectmen, make it 1 Board of Selectmen and add another, like you were mentioning capital outlay, or, and you had mentioned somebody else, but,
Yeah.
so
Well,
take out,
Capital Outlay is a finance group like the Finance Committee.
yeah, so you don't really need,
Oh, well, or Planning Board? Instead of the Capital Outlay?
see, these are all, yeah. I would,
Well, I had done this, I threw this together, I'm not as formal as Helen is, I type it all out, I just scratched it out. I had one selectman, the finance committee chairman, the school board member, 2 former town officials, 2 citizens at large, and 1 town employee. So, that was my take on it.
Can you have a town employee with the unions?
Well, I think it's open to anyone. You know, you're gonna have, the town administrator is gonna be primarily working in town hall. You might wanna have a representative from town hall. You might not want. But I also figured that maybe we should try and capitalize on some former town elected officials or appointed officials that served a long time that might have knowledge that they could bring to the table.
So could you repeat the people you mentioned?
So I said, you know, 1 selectman or 2 selectmen, I don't know if
One.
we're able to have 2 selectmen. The finance committee chairman, he's been on the finance committee a number of years. A school committee member, 2 former town officials, 2 citizens at large. Let me see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, we wouldn't need the town employee, that's 7.
Former town
No, we wouldn't have the town employee.
officials.
And 2 citizens at large. So, 1 selectman, the finance committee chairman, school committee member, 2 former town officials, and 2 citizens at large.
I don't have a problem with that. I think we're getting close. The only thing I would say is that I wouldn't limit the finance committee to the chairperson, only because I think we have a good array, a good amount in the finance committee that are experienced enough that in case John's schedule is too tight, I don't, you know, I think we should just leave it up to the finance committee to decide who they want to serve on this committee. And the only other thing is, when I mentioned 3 Carver residents, I don't mind changing it to 2, but I put a recommendation in here that residents cannot currently serve on any town committee or be employed by the town. Just, you know, because my whole thought process was to keep the diversity, to have a segment from each population, so.
I remember I served on the board on the last one, and the finance committee chairman didn't get picked, and he wasn't happy. He had been on it a number of years, so, we can leave it in abeyance right now and see what, you know.
You could put finance committee chairman or his designee.
Yeah, that's what we could do.
Right.
And that would probably be the case with the school committee also?
That makes sense to keep it consistent.
And then
And
2 residents or
Yeah, I have,
at
any
large?
resident can apply.
Yep.
You know,
2 former town officials.
yeah,
So if
Whether
somebody,
they were elected or appointed,
they would have to apply.
yes.
Right.
They have to apply on their own, and then we would select them.
so I will make a motion to, how do we have it worded on the minutes? Establish a screening committee for the town administrator to encompass 1 board of selectmen, 1 school committee chair and/or
Designee.
his designee, 1 finance committee member, the finance committee chair or his designee, and 2 former town officials, and 2 citizens at large.
And I'll second that.
To also, to make it a stipulation that the residents cannot currently serve on any town committee or be employed by the town.
I'll second that.
All set, Elaine? We vote?
Am I running
Got a
this? or
motion
you?
and a second?
Yep.
All sorted out? No further comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
301. Okay. I'm gonna jump just a little bit. Request for town accountant to vote on additional year-end line item transfers. We'll get your 2 items out of the way here, Megan.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. So on the line item transfers, I actually don't have any. Fortunately, we appear to be good. So we'll be finishing with no deficits. Then the second item was two-part, to approve the lease document for the FY14 capital leases. And then also the second part of that would be to authorize Mr. Purcell to be able to be the authorized signer, as Rick was previously the authorized
Now,
signer.
Did you give documents to our office to be handed out to us?
I brought up the lease document to the Selectmen's office yesterday.
Okay. So, because we don't have it, as far as I know. But this isn't something we can table. This needs to be addressed tonight, and I'll let Meg explain that, because her and I have had a conversation about this.
Sure. The heart of the document that's really being approved tonight would be the resolution, which is the approval of the lease, and then it's also to approve Mr. Purcell as the authorized signer. The reason why it has to be done tonight is that the lease needs to close on July 23rd, and at that point, we lock in an interest rate, and that allows the departments who have items on the capital plan for fiscal 14 to move forward and to make their purchases. If we did not close on the 23rd, the rates could possibly change, and then all the numbers that we approved at town meeting would change. So the 23rd would be 2 weeks from now, and if you were to have a meeting, it would be after that time when we close. So that's why it would be done tonight, but if there are any concerns, my suggestion would be to approve the resolution. I won't send in the lease documents if there are any questions. I'll hold those documents until all questions have been answered. And if there was anything really concerning, you could always vote to rescind the resolution, but hopefully that would at least get it started and at least the opportunity for anyone to have any questions answered. I think that would take care of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of going forward with this, but this is something I've always had a concern about, is that the blended rate of the interest rate that Meg gave me was, what, 2.86?
2.803.
And we just borrowed money on a short-term basis for 0.5, so that's 5 or 6 times the rate we would pay. I've always advocated this, that we should be, instead of leasing equipment, we should be doing the State House notes. When we use our financial advisor, he charges us $400 to do that process, and it costs $625 to,
75.
yeah. So, and plus we had to get an opinion from town council, which there'll probably be a charge on, but with bond counsel, when we run these things by bond counsel, he doesn't charge us for the short-term interim stuff. He only does it. So overall, I think it's really not a great deal to continue on doing all these leases. That next year, we should take a serious look at, if we're gonna do equipment leases,
Thank you.
also doing the State House notes. I don't know if you agree with me at that. That's not to admonish you or
No.
anyone else. We're already here now. We need to go forward with this.
Yeah, I did look into the house notes a little bit today, and they do look like they have better rates. There would be two, you could do a pros and a cons, and I suppose the two cons with the house notes is that, like with the lease, they provide the amortization schedule so that you can track it with what they give you. The house notes, there are stipulations that you have to make a payment within the first year, and it has to be paid off within 5 years. But that requires a lot of in-house tracking. So if you were to do a lot that way, it could be cumbersome, a lot of paperwork. The other issue would be is that you only have the 5 years. So on this lease, we have school buses, which are being purchased over, or as a lease period of 7 years, which means if you were to go to 5 years, you'd have to pay a lot more through the raise and appropriate. But that being said, there's nothing to say that you couldn't possibly maybe utilize
Lease
both.
some, you could have it blended thing,
Right.
yes. And what I'd like to point out to the board, there's a lot of boilerplate in this, and like Meg said, we could enlist the help of the interim town administrator and leave it in his hands. I'm sure you've seen these things before, and so I think I'd like to make a motion that we approve these.
We have a motion to
Documents.
approve
Second.
and a second. Further questions, comments, concerns?
Just a quick comment on that, just in general. Was there ever, Meg, you weren't here yet, was there ever an analysis done to compare whether the house note would have been better than a lease?
No, but it's all past history now, I think.
Okay, so now
Moving
that-
forward, that
I
we have
think-
Meg here, that
Yeah.
we can,
Yeah.
go through that process.
I think that that would definitely, be
Makes
on the
sense.
list to be done.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, without doing that, how do you know which is the best?
exactly.
I'm sure the capital outlay did some comparisons on that at
Oh, yeah.
some point in time, so,
Mhm.
but, I mean, it could we should look at it.
Oh, yeah,
again,
every year.
Whatever, but,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Anything else?
That's it.
Hearing nothing else, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 4-0-0. 4-0-1.
Is that also the authorization for Mr. Purcell to be the authorized signer?
That, no, that didn't include that, that was just your capital leasing, wasn't it?
Okay.
That's really not on the document tonight, so
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
question whether we can
Oh, you can't
Yeah.
do it, okay.
vote on that tonight, or
Yeah.
we're gonna have to put that off until.
Mr. Chairman, I think at worst, a vote might be redundant. I think
Yeah.
you've appointed me as the interim
Yeah.
town
Okay.
And he's-
Purchasing agent goes
That
along
carries,
with
yeah,
that?
the
that
chief
carries all the
procurement
powers
officer.
and
Okay.
duties
Good.
Perfect.
of the office, and the contract indeed
Yeah.
confers all the powers and duties of that office on me, so
Excellent.
I
Saved by
don't think
the
that's
expert.
necessary.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we're good to go with that?
Thank you,
then?
Mayor.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks for waiting around.
Thank
Oh,
you.
no problem. Thank you.
Okay, discussion of open meeting law violation from June 25th, 2013 Board of Selectmen meeting. And
That's in our packet here.
I think it was just a complaint.
What are we, we're skipping around?
Okay, this is from Mr. Robert Belvin.
Oh, I read this.
And the Carver Board of Selectmen met for a scheduled open public meeting June 24th, 2013. It was properly posted. The posting contained discussion and possible vote RE hiring an interim town administrator. After the candidates were interviewed, discussion held and a vote to appoint an individual. Town Council Greg Corbo provided a motion for Selectman Marone to read regarding going into executive session to negotiate a contract for the interim town administrator. Then Chairman Mike O'Donnell returned and opened up citizen participation. Mr. Belvin then went to the mic and stated that there was no mention of executive session on the agenda. Attorney Corbo responded that it was allowed because it is covered under the agenda item discussion and possible vote, RE hiring the interim town administrator, that this discussion is allowed in executive session. Mr. Belvin disagreed and stated his opinion that the executive session must be posted. Posting requirements of the open meeting law require the board to list all topics that the chair reasonably anticipates. In this case, it was entirely reasonable to anticipate the convening of an executive session. Attorney Corbo's statement in defense of the posted agenda indicated that an executive session fell within the scope of the original posting. The posted agenda is for an open session, and it is simply not reasonable to allow executive sessions unless clearly and properly noticed. Failure to properly and accurately post this executive session misled the public into assuming that no such session would occur. Similar executive sessions by the Board of Selectmen in the past resulted in controversy and open meeting law violations. In Carver, members of the public may participate in citizens' participation forum. Members of the public who believed there would be no executive session were denied an opportunity to speak on issues to be discussed in executive session through the improper posting. The selectmen knew prior to 48 hours that they would be voting on an interim town administrator, and an anticipated executive session would be needed to negotiate a contract. That town council was present for this meeting is another indication of the intent of an executive session, that the new town administrator would be starting soon. For this reason, the executive session was anticipated, and the posting should have reflected this executive session. The town of Carver ZBA was cited for failure to post executive session accurately, and this decision was sent to Attorney Corbo. Open Meeting Law 2012-113 is a response sent to Attorney Corbo regarding the posting requirement. Open Meeting Law 2013-65 relates to this complaint regarding posting of executive sessions. Finally, Open Meeting Law 2011-56 is a prior violation of the Carver Board of Selectmen failure to post executive session with proper specificity. And that is a complaint. Mr. Corbo, would you like to jump in here at this point?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have received a copy of the complaint, and yes, I was present and so advised the board during the meeting in question. At this point, you have a formal complaint in front of you, and under the open meeting law and the Attorney General regulations, you have 14 business days to respond. Generally, what happens is my office prepares a response that is sent to the Attorney General's office and is simultaneously copied to the complainant. I would ask you tonight to take a vote to authorize me to respond to the complaint. And I will explain the basis for my response. When the board met on June 25th, there was an agenda item, discussion and possible vote, Ray hiring an interim town administrator. There was also an agenda item, interviews for interim town administrator, listing 4 particular individuals. At the time that the agenda was prepared, it was not known to the chair that an appointment would be made at that meeting. And in fact, as it turned out, 2 members of the board did not participate due to potential conflicts of interest. So not only did you not know that an appointment would be made, but at that time you didn't even know what the composition of the board would be. So what you did was prepare a broad agenda item that allowed you the flexibility to conduct the interviews and to vote on a possible contract for the interim town administrator, which would include going into executive session to discuss the preliminary terms of that potential contract. Now, previous decisions in which the town has been cited for not providing sufficient specificity in an agenda posting with respect to an executive session was when the particular board at issue knew it would be going into executive session, but did not inform the public as to why it would be going into executive session. Here, the board did not know that it would be going into executive session ahead of time, but it informed the public of the nature and scope of its discussion, that it would be discussing the hiring of an interim town administrator, which might include the discussion of terms of the contract and a possible executive session. Therefore, it's my opinion that the board was properly in executive session during the meeting in question.
Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we have Copeland and Page reply to the complainant and to the Attorney General's office.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, comments, questions, concerns, recommendations?
Well, I have a brief question for Greg. I'm not sure exactly how I should act on this at this point in time, whether it would be inappropriate for me to even vote on this. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it just occurred to me.
Well, I don't think at this point you're talking about the hiring of the town administrator. You're talking about responding to an open meeting law complaint. I don't think it's part of the same question.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, is it possible that our town administrator could issue the response? Or because this directly involves Copeland and Page, that they should issue the response? Is there a conflict of interest since Copeland and Page is part of this complaint, that they should be issuing the response? So I just have a few questions before I say yes to that.
I think that's a viable question. Mr. Coble?
Well, it's not a conflict of interest for me to issue a response if I'm implicated in the complaint. The complaint is against the board, and I'm your town council. In this case, our interests are aligned in that defending the board successfully is also in my best interest as well. And so, I don't think there's a conflict there. However, I'm happy to consult with the interim town administrator to work with him on a response.
Clearly, the complaint is against the Board of Selectmen.
And I
Well,
believe it also says,
Well, he's the advisor to the board, but I mean,
I
But
request
I
the board.
think if you look at the open meeting law and what the Attorney General, has jurisdiction over, I think it's primarily municipal districts and towns and cities. I don't think there's, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I don't think there's any law firms mentioned in there. They're all lawyers,
That's fine, I just don't want the Attorney General to be slanted in making a decision based on who's responding, and I'm just trying to save money. That I know that Rick had started to respond to these open meeting law complaints prior to his leaving. I don't know whether it's too soon for Jim to feel comfortable to do that, so.
well, one of the things that I might suggest is that we have Mr. Purcell for a minimal,
Excuse me?
we have Mr. Purcell for a minimal amount of time,
Yep.
as it is on a weekly basis. So we might want to use that productively for some other things and let Copeland and Page respond to this as legal advisors. He's got to get his feet on the
If-
ground and
well-
stuff, and he's got a lot of things to do to
This
start
is not a
out.
comment on the content of
Right,
the complaint.
right.
I heard the table earlier that open meeting law complaints come in on a very, very regular basis. I agree with your assessment, Mr. Chairman. I will be very busy working for you, but it's imperative that I be productive.
Right.
And this is, and that is leading the day-to-day operation of the town.
Right.
I'm not trivializing this at all, but this is tasking, this is not managing performance.
Right, if we had you for 60 hours a week, that might be a different story or something,
might be a
so,
different story.
full-time. So, would you agree with that assessment, Ms. Morone?
Tasking at a very high rate.
That's, if that's so, I
No,
think.
and I understand.
Would you agree with that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we had the original motion. We had a second?
Dick seconded it, didn't you?
Yeah.
I made the motion.
Any further discussion or comments, or? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. All right. All right, the last several items on the agenda concern an interim police chief, a discussion concerning town council services, and an executive session. So at this point, I'm going to recuse myself and turn it over to the vice chairman and let him deal with this.
And I'm going to take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Give Mike a chance. Understand?
All right, what's up next?
So let's get back to work on the agenda. I believe the next item is discussion and possible vote to appoint Sergeant Mark Dufely as permanent or interim police chief. Mark, you want to come up? And you too, chief? I believe you all have his resume in front of you.
Yes.
You have it, Sarah?
Good evening, everyone.
I think I'll start off and have Mark explain a little bit about your background.
Thank you. First of all, I'm a dad of 2 great kids. That's my most proud accomplishment. And I've been a police officer for the past 18 and a half years, the last 10 and a half of which I've had the honor of serving the town of Carver and their residents. And enjoyed that very much. And over the past 3 years, I've had the opportunity to work with Chief Mike Mix, and under his tutelage, advance my career to a point where it's at today, where I've learned a lot more about the management and the active running of a police department. And I've been very, very fortunate to have that. I'm also, in my capacity as a police officer, I've been a member of a special reaction team down in New Bedford Police Department, and recently just got onto the SWAT team with our regional team up here in Semlec. So I have some varied training from out on the road and some administrative training as well.
Any questions from the board?
I was looking at your specialized training,
Yes.
Mark. Glocker Armorer's class, what's that?
Glock firearms are the firearms that New Bedford police carry, and that class was to be able to disassemble and maintain those firearms.
Mark, that was the shortest sell on a person's self that I have ever witnessed in all my years of interviewing and being on this board. That was great. I just am glad you came to the forefront to even be considered. And I consider Mike's recommendation highly, but I will tell you that I had no idea of your work experience. I mean, when I was speaking with Mike about, what's the next step, number one, I just thought it would be a natural transition. And second, I would take Mike's recommendations very hard. I spoke with several police officers, and you are highly well-respected in the police department, which, with my, having management experience, I just know that having a team is critical to the success of any department. You take it to the next level of a department that's protecting our town. It is incredibly important that the police officers respect you. But then when I looked at your resume, I was like, even if you didn't have all that, I am just truly impressed with your background. And with that, could you just give a little bit of a story about this Semlec Regional SWAT team that you have been accepted as a member of?
First of all, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. I am very fortunate to be part of this team. We've had a chief that's been an excellent leader over the past 3 years. We have an excellent team, a team that you can all be proud of. I've been in this business for almost 19 years, and some of the best police officers I know work in this department. And as far as the Semlec SWAT team, it's a regional team made up. Semlec is a regional concept that allows our department to share resources with other departments in the southeastern Mass region. It allows for us to have access to a SWAT team or a dive team or a search and recovery team, teams that we wouldn't be able to afford to have full-time, but because we have this regional team using resources from other departments, we're able to have those teams. A SWAT team is something that's used, it's called Special Weapons and Tactics. It's used to make entry to homes in dangerous situations and such. And we have access to having that team here in a very short period of time if we needed it. We have, myself, I'm a member of the team, but it's a team of almost 50 members. So in time of crisis, we can have them here right away and be able to use them. So by participating in that, we gain that the ability to have those people on call and ready to go whenever we would need them. We also have Sergeant Raymond Orr is on the dive team, so that's another thing. If we had to recover something in Sampson's Pond or anything like that, we have access to that team because we're part of this Semlec.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dick, you have any questions?
I don't have questions. I have comments. I have seen Mark for a number of years in town. I think he acts in a very professional manner. He has a good work ethic because we've seen that over the last couple of years as the administrative sergeant. You're well respected by the community. You're well respected by your own department. And I think that you're in a position where you would be the person I would want to see move up to chief. So I would be supportive of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wood.
Sarah?
Thank you. And I wanted to thank you, Mark, for your humility in this whole process and your professionalism. And I also take Chief Mix's recommendation of you as a very high recommendation, and it's a valuable one to me. So,
Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
And I had the opportunity to sit and meet with Mark and the chief for an hour and a half and review your background to make sure that you really want to take on this responsibility, which you indicated that you did. So, and I was looking at your resume here. that, I believe it said that you were a sniper or something. and
Yes, sir.
Like, in the IMC initials there, is that the system that we use in the cruisers?
Yes, that's correct. That's the computer records management system that we use at the police department now.
And I've also had the opportunity to work hand in hand with Mark and Joe Ritz when we went back and well, actually, you guys did most of the heavy lifting where you recalculated from the prior contract back 5 years, and we calculated all those numbers to bring about the back pay that we had to pay. And thankfully, we were able to, through Mike Mix's involvement and probably part of yours, we were able to sign a contract in 1 year's time. So, and I know you've been the union president, so you've been on the other side of the table negotiating. So I think you bring a lot of expertise and experience to the position. And I noted that when Arthur Parker was here, he groomed Mike Mix to take over this position, and I feel that Mike Mix has done a good job grooming you for this position. So I'd like to know from the board members, I mean, it's my feeling, I think we should make him the permanent chief. Never mind this interim acting chief type thing. I think he's ready to step into those shoes right now, but I want to hear what the rest of the board has to say, and I'd like a motion.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair. I would have considered an interim police chief if we didn't have one of our own, if you will, with a natural transition. I think it would secure Mark and this town if we considered going right to a full-time police chief and work it out through the contract in terms of, because he is brand new as police chief, maybe a shorter contract to start or whatever, but I mean, that
Well,
would be down the
we'd
road.
negotiate the contract later, but
Right, that's what I mean.
my
So,
feeling was instead of an acting chief, to have a permanent chief.
Right,
I'll make a motion that we appoint Mark Dufely as our permanent police chief.
I'll
Is
second
there a
that.
second? Motion made and second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Oh, did you want to speak, chief?
Just a couple of things. I never would have picked Mark as my number 2 if I didn't think he had the capabilities, as I've discussed with each one of you
Yep.
when you've asked me. He's more humble than you're probably ever going to find. He'll do a good job for you, and the officers respect him and will work for him. I think you'll have a very smooth transition. I think you're making the right decision. I'll make one quick suggestion, and since Mr. Corbo's here, he can correct me if I'm wrong. May I suggest your motion is that you appoint him as the permanent police chief, pending the successful negotiations of a contract? And if Greg wants to clean that up for me, please do. I've never been known to be the most articulate person, so.
No,
How should we word it?
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, yes, thank you, Chief. Yeah, I would suggest the motion be, I move that we appoint Mark,
Dufely.
Dufely to serve as permanent police chief, subject to successful contract negotiation, and to direct town council to negotiate a contract and report back to the board at its next meeting.
That's what I said.
You know, and Elaine, he has this written down, so I'll get a copy of it for you. Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. I know you're humble, but do you want to say something?
If I could just say something quick, I just want to thank Chief Mix, because I wouldn't be sitting at this table today if he didn't see that in me and bring me up as he's done. And I appreciate that very much. And it means a great deal that you all voted for me, and I greatly appreciate that also. And I just, will certainly miss Chief Mix, and I wish him the best in Hanson. I know he's going to do great, but I wouldn't be here today if he didn't have the faith in me, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And thank you all for voting. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I know the town clerk's here, but you can't swear him in yet till we negotiate his contract.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay. Hand that down. the chief's still here, Chief Mix. Police mutual aid agreement for discussion and possible vote. You want to explain this to us?
Thank you. This is, as soon-to-be Chief tunefully explained what SEMLEC is. This revolves around SEMLEC. At the request of SEMLEC, after the marathon bombings, a number of officers were called for mutual aid up to the Boston area. Massachusetts has some strange laws. Basically, in many incidents, a police officer's jurisdiction ends at their boundaries. I can go into 20 years of problems that this has caused that the Mass Chiefs has been trying to work to correct through the legislature, which has not been happening for various reasons. To make a long story short, this request has come from MetroLEC, which is the equivalent of SEMLEC, that takes care of the Boston metro area. They've asked that we, each individual town, as opposed to the consortium that is SEMLEC, sign a mutual aid agreement with MetroLEC. I know I'm using a whole bunch of acronyms, but if I said it all out, we'd be here until midnight by the time I got through all the titles. Long story short, I know it's kind of a lengthy document. Basically what it would do is put in place a permanent mutual aid agreement between MetroLEC and the town of Carver, which would allow officers from MetroLEC, if they were called in here, to have their full police powers. Vice versa, if a Carver officer is called up into the MetroLEC area, they would also have police powers. This allows for, I'll put the simplest example that can come up. If a Carver officer is in Boston and witnesses a misdemeanor, there's really nothing they can do about it. If they witness it and they're under their mutual aid, under this agreement, they can act as a police officer would at any time. Where this has come into problems has been happening in district courts, where officers are getting called to district courts and somebody acts up in the lobby or in the courtroom, and the officers naturally just, their training kicks in and their instincts kick in and they go and take care of a problem, and then they find out you're actually a citizen in the court, you're not a police officer, and you're outside your jurisdiction. It's a lengthy document. SEMLEC basically said their opinion is sign it. It doesn't cost anything. We don't give up any rights, and I don't see, I don't see officers from MetroLEC will be coming down here to try and do Carver police work unless they're called here. So it's really, actually, if you remember, about 2 years ago, we joined, I'll give you another acronym, OCPAC, which gave us a permanent state of mutual aid with 16 towns in the area, most importantly with Plimpton, because we have the problem where the town line runs through the Tractor Supply, and we didn't want to get into who arrests who, because they shoplifted on the left side of the store or the right side of the store. We signed this with Plimpton, and I told Plimpton they get the whole store. So it worked out well for Carver. I think this will work out well for us as well. All it needs, it actually doesn't need a vote, I don't believe. They said that the chairman of the board, in this case the vice chair, could take part, but I suppose we're here, you might as well take a vote. That would definitely make it cleaner. And
You know, I just read in the Enterprise about an arrest that was made for drugs, and it was a Plimpton police officer assisted a Carver police officer. Matter of fact, Officer Rizzuto was the one that made the stop and picked up a bunch of drugs. So I think these types of agreements expand our police force from other towns to help us out. I think it's a big benefit to us.
they do. It is. It's kind of a no-brainer. It's troublesome that the legislature won't just pass a law and make it so we have our police powers everywhere. But they haven't, in 20 years. So this is the route we're going to try and take care of these issues. Again, it keeps things clean. It protects the officers. It protects the other communities, and it'll protect Carver from litigation for false arrests and other issues. So my suggestion is you sign it.
I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we ratify this mutual aid agreement between the police departments of the metropolitan Boston area,
Second.
And authorize me to sign it.
and authorize you to sign it.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. I gotta sign that?
I think we, oh, you said.
Oh.
Yeah, you said.
So we could have an executive session on the contract.
Right.
Give that back to the chief. Next item, I think we've gone through everything. Next item is discussion and possible vote regarding town council services. Yeah, I think it's good public policy and best practices from time to time to review the services that we receive from different services, and tonight we have on the agenda the town council services.
Should I make a motion so we can discuss it?
Yeah, you could do that. You can make a motion for discussion
So
purposes.
I will make a motion to reappoint K and P for purposes of discussion.
Motion made?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
I just want to point out, we went through this last year, and it's my understanding that there is no reappointment process for Coleman and Page. That if there's some issue about their performance, should be given notice, and that should be the discussion. But it's not a reappointment that the board makes every year.
Well, I just think it's good business practice to come up and interview different law firms, the services they're gonna give us, and see if we can save some money and what types of services we're gonna receive. That's what's on the agenda. I would have thought that you would have objected to this before it got on the agenda, or at least why it was on.
Well, I didn't like it, but I haven't liked other things in the past, and that hasn't mattered very much, apparently. We did go through this process. It was quite a lengthy one, and the requirements that we had, and I believe it was our former Legal Services Committee that came up with those requirements. And Copeland and Page was, if you'll recall, the only law firm that actually fulfilled those requirements. And to me, it seemed just like a useless exercise for them to jump through that hoop every year. I just don't understand that.
And that was several years ago.
So what's changed? I mean, that's my question.
Through you, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
My opinion was when it was put on the agenda that it's probably good timing to reassess this again with a new town administrator. And I'm gonna go back to my opinion before that. I think we should continually reassess our vendors. And we've talked about things before and put them back on the agenda, so I don't think there's anything wrong with discussing town council.
If you're discussing what town council provides for us, and I think that they provide such a varied opportunity in terms of attorneys and such. I remember the recount we had, and I can't remember the young lady.
Lauren Goldberg.
Mm.
Lauren
But
Goldberg.
I thought she did an outstanding job. I think generally Copeland and Page has served us in our town very well. And so I would like to just continue with Copeland and Page.
Well, it's on the agenda. I'm gonna second it for discussion purposes. And one thing I'd like to say is, I mean, I know, Sarah, you have a public disclosure on file with the town clerk's office, but, Copeland and Page is involved with a collective bargaining unit that you're involved in right now, so is it really appropriate for you to be participating in this discussion? You might have a conflict of interest. Of course, it's certainly up to you.
Yes, it is. What do you think, Greg, Mr. Corbo? Yes, and I hadn't occurred to me, so I'm sorry to
Well-
put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. Our role in negotiating collective bargaining agreements is not to set policy, but to simply guide the policymakers through the process. So the mere fact that you are in a collective bargaining unit, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily give rise to a financial interest on your part in town council services. But, certainly if you have a question about that, I would suggest you might want to consult with the State Ethics Commission.
Okay, yeah, and especially considering the union hasn't even been formed yet, so
Well, you're in the
I'm actually
process of,
speaking to Mr.
Okay.
Corbo, Jack.
Well, sure, and just to, make it clear for everyone, Mr. O'Donnell recuses himself for a different reason. He's involved in litigation with the town, and certainly, town council has a significant role in litigation and advancing litigation. And a person who is a litigant may have a financial interest in who the town's attorney is, versus someone who simply is a member of a bargaining unit, likely would not have the same financial interest.
so you don't believe that Sarah Hewens has a conflict here, even though your firm is involved as much as it is, even with, where it is right now? I mean, you're not really just in the point of negotiation. It's a little bit higher standard right now for where it is right now.
As I sit here today, I do not think so. However, as we've discussed before, conflicts are something that's personal to the individual.
I know that.
And Ms. Hewens, should exercise her judgment and discretion, and if there is question, she's got an avenue to seek clarification, and certainly, an opinion from the State Ethics Commission would put it to rest one way or the other.
So if there's some concern, why don't we table this so that I would have the opportunity to ask those questions of the Ethics Commission? I mean, Mr. Corbo is indicating that he doesn't think so, but it might be worth a
I could be
question.
agreeable with
Yeah.
that. You want to change your motion?
Sure. I'll table the original motion until the next meeting so that we can give Sarah Hewens time to find out if it is an ethics violation in order for her to vote, because we need to know who can vote and who can't,
From the Ethics Commission.
from the Ethics Commission.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any more discussion? Well,
Just a point of order, Mr. Chairman. The motion, I understand, I think I heard table until the next meeting. Good luck getting an ethics commission opinion, turned around kind of quickly. So it's a minor point. I understand you talking about the possibility of the need for, some other meetings before August.
and I know that the communications from the Ethics Commission is confidential between Sarah and the Ethics Commission, so I would only ask that Sarah alert us to receipt of it, one way or the other.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I've called the Ethics Commission, and I've been able to get answers on the spot. I don't think you're going to make a formal, I hope, not a formal ethics question. You're just going to call to get an answer.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
I don't know. I'll see.
Yeah.
And I don't,
Well, we're just trying to,
I don't question the
Yeah.
purpose
Yeah.
and intent of
Yeah.
the motion. I'm just saying, table until the next meeting. It may be
well, let's table it.
Like
What
to
if we
keep it
tabled
till
it
next
until
meeting. No,
Ms. Hewens comes back with an answer?
no, I think we need
No?
an end time, so I would like to keep it until the next meeting.
Which we don't know when would be anyway.
Well, we're gonna have to,
Well, we have to.
we're gonna have
Next
to.
meeting would be officially right now, the last week in August.
No,
No,
the next meeting should be 2 weeks from tonight, because we need to negotiate a contract with the new police chief that we just appointed, because our current police chief is
I agree. I think there's
Right.
business items that we're definitely gonna have to be dealing with.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to have a
Not gonna
meeting
have
on the 23rd, so.
We'll be here.
Mr.
So-
Vice Chair, through you,
Yes.
can I just address one of the issues raised by Ms. Maroney? The fact that there is now an interim town administrator, regardless of what you decide to do with this action item, we will continue on as town council, at least until you find somebody else. I think it's the appropriate time at the next meeting for me to meet with the board in executive session, so for a full update on, what is pending before town council, what exactly it is that we're working on, so that the interim town administrator can be up to date on the issues before council. It's around that time of year that you should be up to date on that as well.
Yes.
And, certainly if there are any issues, please feel free to raise them with me at that time, whether those are performance issues or cost issues. We want to make you guys happy, and we want to provide you with good service at a reasonable price. Is what we've always tried to do, and what we'll continue to try to do. But obviously the choice is yours. Either way, I think we do need to meet and have a status update so that we're all on the same page and we're all marching in the same direction.
You know, I was on the Selectmen before in the mid-'90s, and we went through this whole thing, and Copman and Page was attorneys of record. We had different firms come in and make their presentations, and we retained her. And it's not that we're dissatisfied with you or anything, I just think it's good public policy and good, best
you, Mr.
practices to, to review these things, not just with you, but with anyone that we have services with.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Greg, my intent is a few. I'm very frank, so you understand where I'm coming from, and it's out in the public, is it is savvy and prudent to continually review your vendors. And you have had a long-term relationship with the town of Carver. There is no question about it. Sometimes that can be a good thing, and sometimes it becomes a detriment. And I'm talking about from, yes, my experience being a manager, okay? And I know the municipalities are a little bit different, but it's not when it comes to, having a long-term relationship. I will be frank that I do have a couple concerns, and so you can be prepared that I agree with you that we could talk about in whatever session, whether it be public, open session, or an executive session, about a few of the major high-ticket items that have cost the town a tremendous amount of money over the years. So I just want to be frank with you here that, yeah, it is that the vendor relationships are important to reassess after every few years, but I do have a few concerns that we can discuss. I think that's a great idea.
Through you, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yes. No, thank you, Helen. I mean, we're by no means complacent, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to, sharpen our pencils and make sure that, you're getting the services that you need at the price that is reasonably justified. And I believe that we can do that. So I think it's just a matter of us being able to sit down, going through what those issues are, and making sure that it's being handled the way that you want it to be handled. And, if you see an opportunity for us to, save, we'll be there, and we're receptive to that. And we've talked about ways of doing that, and some of those things are already in motion.
Yes. Yes, Greg, and we have talked to Greg, and we are putting together, and, we're going to discuss it as a board, putting together a legal form where it's going to come through the channel in terms of knowing the services that are going to be utilized up front before the calls are made, and it's an assessment process before we just get on the phone and make calls to our attorneys. But that's something that we have to discuss further in detail. So I know that, and he's made adjustments to other invoices, but it's just, I just want to be frank with you why I am persistent on bringing up vendors every few years. I just think it's important, just like we did with the auditors, so.
So there's a motion and a second on the table to
Table.
table pending Sarah Hewens'
No, until the
response from
next
the Ethics
meeting.
Commission, until the next meeting. All in favor? Any more discussion? I don't think there is. All, do you have it?
There was already a vote.
I didn't think we voted it.
We already voted?
I don't
I
remember.
didn't think we did.
What?
I asked to be recognized.
Yeah, we didn't vote, yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Did you vote, Sarah?
Yeah.
No, it's unanimous.
Mr. Chair, the next meeting, if it's gonna be, would be July 23rd.
Yeah.
That would be the
Fourth,
fourth Tuesday in July. Would that be when we would be having Mr. Corbo come in?
I would say so.
Okay.
Would you be available then?
I could do that.
Okay. And I'd like the new chief to be available too, but you'll be negotiating with possibly town council, so we're gonna have an executive session after this to review that, but you're not invited, so. This is for strategy purposes. And that's the next item.
Use the same,
Oh, I gave it to her.
all right. Can you get it, use the same motion that
Yeah.
you used, just change the.
What's next?
If I may, Mr. Chair. If I may, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that Chief Mix is our chief through July 30th,
Yes.
so wouldn't you be inviting him as well to that meeting?
Yes, I'll be inviting him and town council. The two motions I gave you on a piece of paper, they have to be official.
So Jim, would you like to have a Cranberries 101 course?
Believe it or not, well, yes, I'm always open to learning new things, but when I worked in Norton for 8 years, Makepeace and other companies had holdings
Mm-hmm.
there. Not by your standards, but there's a
Oh, yeah, I know.
large
I know the bog you're talking about. It used to be full of Hammond.
on the eastern and
Yep, yep. Yep.
Coming back.
I used to work there. Mhm.
No, right.
Yeah.
You're
No,
not coming back,
no.
right? Yeah.
I think,
Yeah,
I might be exaggerating if I say 2 floors, but in recent years, it's,
I can't remember the name of the gentleman that owns it now.
yeah, he was a builder, Fred.
Yep. Bottomley,
Fred Bottom.
yep.
Which one?
Through,
Parcel.
This one?
through you, Mr., can I ask one thing before we go into executive session?
If it's on the agenda.
Well, it's just more, if I can request putting something on to the next agenda based on a resident's request.
Well, you can talk to me afterwards and we can put that on.
Okay,
I don't want to have a problem with the open meeting law.
okay.
Should I give this to someone else to do, or should I do it myself? I move pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, that the board go into executive session to conduct strategy and preparation for negotiation of a contract with Police Chief Mark Dufley, and that we not reconvene in open session.
I'll second that.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Or says aye.